And I want everybody to think about the human brain as not being this sort of clinical, far-off thing you can't associate with. I always tell my audiences, you're really looking at a picture of yourself right there. It's the single greatest, most magnificent miracle ever designed in the history of this or any universe, and will never, ever be anything created that even comes close. And Jason, that's just based on what we think the brain can do today, and we don't know a whole lot. That's what's exciting about it. The brain weighs 3 pounds. It's composed of 60% fat, 60. It's the fattest part of the human organism. A lot of us don't know that. The fat insulates the nerve tracts to help propel information quickly. And this is an interesting one here too, Jason. Every time your heart beats, 25% of the blood goes right to the brain. So even though it only weighs 3 pounds, it demands 25% of the blood. Now, as you look at this picture, I want everybody to focus in on that lavender section called the hippocampus. It's kind of deep in the lower part of the brain there. That structure, in my opinion, is the most important part of you because that lays down your life story. That's where we encode new information, where we learn. The entire educational system is built on the altar of the hippocampus. It's in that structure that we learned in 1998 that you and me and all other humans can generate new brain cells. The structure right next to it is called the amygdala. We were talking about COVID earlier. One of the things we've learned about what we're going through right now in our country with COVID is that there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of irritability, there are sleep disorders, mood disorders, and what happens is when we perceive a stressor, that amygdala, that green structure, it gets triggered, Jason, and hormonally it propels cortisol to flood our body, and it tells the brain to develop what's called norepinephrine, also known as adrenaline. So we begin to develop anxiety. The interesting thing about that is when we can't shut that response off, the hippocampus stops functioning. So think about it, everybody, for a second. This is a cool little fact. When you're under a lot of stress and anxiety, maybe it was the math test you had to take or the licensure examination, you don't recall information quite as fast. And so trying to achieve, and we were talking about this, Jason, trying to achieve balance in our lives emotionally, psychologically, even though there are things going on in our lives that are upsetting, can really bring the brain to full fruition in terms of what it's able to do. So those are just a few things. You can begin to imagine what we can talk about as we learn about the structure, what's going on under the hood as it relates to behavior.